practicing Johann Sebastian Bach's Partita Number 1. Some of these movements I learned many years ago, and in particular the minuet I must have learned between the ages of 6 and 8, so this is a really old friend for me. But I never did learn the entire partita, so it's really nice to be seeing the whole thing through finally. Whenever my family listened to the keyboard music of Bach, it was practically always the Glenn Gould recordings. And nowadays, it's the partitas in particular for some reason. It must have been one of the earliest Gould recordings we got. But whenever I hear Gould's recordings of the partitas, it really takes me back to lying on my stomach in front of the stereo, building things out of Legos, which is what I spent a lot of my time doing in those days. And to this day, I associate Bach's highly detail-oriented music, especially whenever there are long runs of 16th notes, with Legos. Make of that what you will. Anyway, working on this partita put me in mind of a whole bunch of other pieces from my childhood. One set of Bach pieces in particular that really takes me down memory lane are the 6 Little Preludes. These are included on the same Gould compilation as the partitas that we had. And so I knew how the 6 Little Preludes sounded, and I thought they would be fun to play. And then one day, when I was, I guess, 6 years old or so, and I remember this day very vividly, I was sick, and I was sitting on the sofa wrapped in a blanket, trying in vain to forget that I had a sore throat. And my dad walks in the door carrying the score of the 6 Little Preludes, and it rather brightened the day. It was this very score. Oh, actually, I was 7 years old. The 6 Little Preludes are not as tightly constructed as, for example, the 2-part inventions, but they're just little fun pieces to play. I had fun playing them. I still remember all the notes, but I have almost no muscle memory left of these pieces, so I'm kind of playing them by ear right now. This one, the 5th of the 6 Little Preludes, I remember playing this one time for some family friends. And on the spur of the moment, as I got to the end of the piece, I decided to do this headlong accelerando, which was definitely not how I had practiced it. I can't demonstrate now because, unfortunately, my fingers don't remember where to go. But on that occasion, amazingly, I made it to the end of the piece with the loss of only a few notes. Anyway, if I was 7 years old at the time I got the score to the 6 Little Preludes, I must have already been working on the 2-part inventions for quite some time. The 2-part inventions are, of course, classic beginner-student material, but they're great to revisit no matter what skill level you're at, for the sake of applying whatever you've picked up in terms of technique and phrasing and whatnot, and applying them to the simplest possible combinations of notes. Funny thing is, I know I must have worked on all 15 of the 2-part inventions at some point, but I have almost zero memory of doing so, and also zero emotional association with them whatsoever, positive or negative. I wonder if maybe I just practiced all the fun out of them. I don't know. But you know what really does take me back hard in terms of nostalgia are the three-part inventions. And I think the reason is that they were both on the same Gould album that I would listen to, so I'd hear the pieces that I was working on, the two-part inventions. But the three-part inventions were always quite literally just out of reach because I couldn't stretch an octave in either hand yet. Yes, there is one octave at the end of the first two-part invention. But you can leave out one note in the left-handed. It doesn't mess up the musical fabric that much. However, in most or all of the three-part inventions, you do have to stretch an octave in either hand at some point. And by the time that my hands had gotten big enough that I could have played the three-part inventions, I was busy studying more involved pieces from, for example, the well-tempered clavier. And so the three-part inventions came to symbolize for me this sort of magical fairy tale world that had always just been around the corner and yet I never knew, which is kind of the purest form of nostalgia. Not that all of them are as happy as that A major one, by the way. For example, there's the F minor one. The F minor three-part invention has to be one of the most melancholy pieces Bach ever wrote, and with such economy of material, too. Anyway, as I was saying, by then I was working on pieces from the well-tempered clavier. In particular, here's one early favorite that does require octaves. This is Fugue 7 from Book 1. By the way, if you can't reach an octave and you're looking for something exciting to play, Prelude number 6 from Book 2 is not that difficult, and there are definitely no octaves in it. But as a small child, it always struck me as the most epically angry sounding prelude of all. If you did a heavy metal arrangement of that prelude, I think it would work pretty well. And I can't let this video end without mentioning the Gigue from French Suite number 5, because it was featured quite prominently on the kids program Mr. Bach Comes to Call. If you don't know this, you might remember Beethoven Lives Upstairs. There was a whole series of kids programs about different composers. And in the Mr. Bach one, there's this little girl who doesn't want to practice the piano. And she gets this visit from this mysterious guy, Mr. Bach, who plays her a whole bunch of his music. The moment when she starts to realize that maybe piano music could be fun is when he plays this piece. They only play the first half of it in the show, and so a couple years later, when I first heard the Gould recording of the whole piece, I was taken aback to learn that there was actually a whole second half to it. And for a while, I always thought that the first half sounded much better on its own. Anyway, if you play the piano, or really any instrument, I'm curious to know what are some early pieces you worked on that nowadays, if you play them or you hear them, they take you down memory lane. In a good way, that is. Share them with us in the comments. I will see you in the next video. I'm Ben, signing off.